Do you see a lot of these young superstars saying, I want out at the end of the season? Do you see that happening?
I'm curious how it plays out. I don't think so. I think, I'm sure Garrett Wilson is somebody that is very frustrated because this has directly impacted him the most, it feels like, after playing with Zach Wilson, after playing with what's left of Aaron Rodgers. He's a guy that has been really good, and just it's hard to produce when you're in his situation. When you look at Breece strikes me as a guy that I'm going to put my head down. I'm going to get better. Breece is in a contract year already next year because he was a second-round pick, so he'll have that fourth year. And yeah, the franchise tag exists, but that's a different conversation. I look at Sauce. Sauce is a guy that was under-recruited, eventually ends up at Cincinnati. That program turned around with him. He's been in places where things can turn around, and I think Sauce takes a lot of pride in that. And I don't view him as a guy like Jamal Adams that just goes, hey, it's not good enough for me here. Get me out of here. So if any one of those big three were going to make a little chatter, although it's not his personality, it would be Garrett Wilson because he has a right to with how poor the offense has been, which is impacting him directly. And he's a guy that wants to be paid, I would like anyone else, as the top receiver one day when that time comes. Now they have the fifth-year option for him. So I think we're still a year away from that. It doesn't mean those frustrations won't leak out and we'll hear about it, but the team actually responding to trade chatter or trade requests would personally surprise me because this is a young nucleus that even if it's going to be a new head coach and new GM, there's still a lot of reason to invest in these guys. When you have a few good players, you need to make sure that you do everything in your power to make sure they're set up for success. And that's the mission of the offseason with whoever they hire on this coaching staff.
Those two names are the ones I think you got to keep an eye on. It's Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall. I don't think that Sauce Gardner is going to go kick in the door and demand a trade. It's Breece and Garrett. And again, the reason why I would keep my eye on those two guys is because of how much this losing takes a toll on them. Like they are emotionally despondent after these games. I mean, I think it was the Patriot game. We walked into the locker room afterwards, and all other players are getting dressed and showered and all that. And Breece Hall is literally in the corner of the locker room in his full uniform, hand in his head like this, with a towel over his head. And he was like that for another 45 minutes. He was the last player to leave. It was like he couldn't process.
What happened? I mean, that happened last night. Same exact situation.
Yeah, it's debilitating to these players, and eventually enough is enough. Now, I think a new general manager coming in could help the fact. I think a new quarterback coming in could help the fact. I think a new head coach could absolutely come in and help the fact, because I know Garrett and Breece right now have issues with what's happening under center, and I know they have a lot of issues with the offensive staff. There are a lot of issues, and there were substantial issues last year with Nathaniel Hackett. They have not gotten any better with Nathaniel Hackett and Todd Downing. These two players, I know this for a fact, do not believe that they're being put in the best position to have success, and those concerns are mounting and mounting and mounting and mounting and mounting. The one thing that I will say is, again, while all of that new blood that's going to be coming into this building can rejuvenate them, they are not players, either of them, and I don't believe that they should, who are going to say, you know what, I won't test my hand in free agency. I'll take the team-friendly deal to just get my money now to stay with the Jets for the next 4 years. I genuinely believe that all of these key players are going to be due for money. They'll be willing to talk to the Jets. They'll be willing to consider it, but there will be no hometown discount. If after what they've endured for the last 4 years, they're going to be looking for like collateral. Like they're going to want something to like make up for all of that. So they are going to try to get the most absolute money they can get. If not, they'll take less to go play somewhere else, knowing that they believe they can have success. Whether it's Garrett saying, hell, I'll go join with Patrick Mahomes. I'll go play with him. He needs a wide receiver. Let me go play for that guy. Buffalo, Josh Allen, they need a receiver. Let me go there. Like something along those lines I could absolutely see happening. That hometown discount, I think that ship has completely and totally sailed. And Connor, I think the real interesting thing is that this Jets roster, when they do hire a new general manager in the offseason, it is certainly in significantly better place than the one that John Idzik inherited or Mike McCagnon initially, then when he tried to rebuild it, and certainly Joe Douglas in 2019. However, there are major decisions because while the Jets in their cap space landscape look good right now, they don't have a quarterback, and a lot of those players that make this job appealing, they all need to get paid, and there are going to be some very difficult decisions with a potentially questionable budget to do so with.
So Connor Rogers, I'm going to put your Woody Johnson, okay? Do you think about trading those players like the Breece Hall, the Garrett Wilson, the Sauce Gardners to start a long-term rebuild, or do you keep them?
I would not because of their age, right? I mean, there's a real world where some of the players that are going to be in this draft are the same age as a 24-year-old Garrett Wilson, believe it or not. Like, that's the world we're living in with NIL, with college, and the COVID years, which is ending soon. But these are young players that could be the nucleus of your team. I think strategically what you have to do is you have to try to pay one guy early. And maybe it goes back to Connor's original point that Sauce is the guy that's least likely to want to jump ship. And Sauce has had a tough year. I understand that, but maybe you can find some common ground, because if you're able to extend one of the three, that opens up your franchise tag for someone else, where you can't hold out in this era anymore. I mean, the CBA that the players union has agreed to has completely eliminated that. We saw when Hassan Reddick did it, worked out real well for him. Cost him a ton of money, and he's having a terrible year. Nobody wants to go down that road again. It was one of the dumbest decisions I've ever seen from a player in my life. So when it comes down to it, that's how you kind of have to operate. Now, let's not forget the Giants a couple of years ago ran into this same problem, and they played their hands wrong with Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley. So that's what they'll have to figure out. And honestly, it's one of those situations because of the fifth-year option that they have, which they'll pick up for probably all three of the first rounders, and Sauce, Garrett Wilson, and Jermaine Johnson. They have more team control on those guys, where Breece is the player that the clock is kind of ticking a little quicker on, and you'll have to make a decision on him the quickest.